Greetings and welcome to Trail Astronomy on the SHT with AstroBob. My name is Annie Nelson. I'm the Development and Communications Director for the Superior Hiking Trail Association, the nonprofit that protects, renews, and enhances the Superior Hiking Trail. We are so excited to host this webinar today to learn about one of the most wondrous things we see on trail, the stars. Today, Bob will teach us about the green flash, northern lights, meteor showers, and much more. He will recommend places on the trail that offer prime views of the sky. He will also share his favorite sky watching tools and some apps that can support our astronomy on the trail. To begin, I want to acknowledge that the Superior Hiking Trail is located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe people. At the association, we work to improve the resiliency and sustainability of the trail for future generations, work we've been doing for more than 37 years. We lead by harnessing the power of our wonderful volunteers, supporters, partners, and trail users to break down barriers, engage participants, and create deeper relationships between people and nature. Our association is honored to serve as the stewards and promoters of this North Shore treasure. If you would like to support our work and help cover the cost of producing this webinar, please visit superiorhiking.org to donate or become a member of the SHTA. During tonight's webinar, if you have any questions for Bob, please ask them using the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to get as many of your questions answered as we can after his presentation. And now I am thrilled to introduce AstroBob. AstroBob King is a beloved local astronomer here on the North Shore, freelance writer and retired photographer. He's also a big fan of the Superior Hiking Trail. His Astronomy for Everyone stories are featured regularly in the Duluth News Tribune, on WTIP, and the North 103.3. Bob has taught community education astronomy classes at the University of Minnesota Duluth and Marshall Allworth Planetarium since 1987, and astronomy classes at Boulder Lake Environmental Learning Center since 2011. Bob is an amazing presenter, and we highly recommend following him on Facebook for his recommendations about amazing things to see in the North Shore skies. So without further ado, here is AstroBob.
Wow, that is a splendid introduction. Thank you so much, Annie. And thanks everyone who's listening, who's here tonight, for spending some time together with me so we could talk about the nighttime sky and some spots on the Superior Hiking Trail. My very favorite path on Earth, really, like you, where you can see the stars and maybe see the northern lights and a few other things as well. I'm going to start at the presentation now. We're going to talk about stargazing on the Superior Hiking Trail, where generally, at least if you're outside of the city of Duluth and you're on the rural part of the trail, you have some pretty dark skies to work with, which is a wonderful thing. And the hiking trail has those incredible vistas, and we all pay a little bit of effort in getting to those vistas, but my gosh, it's always worth it, isn't it, when you get to the top? And you could look out. This is a picture of one of my daughters. She and I went up Wolf Rock, a perfect place to look towards the western sky and a little bit to the north for sunsets, for instance. When you are out on the trail, we're going to talk about several different things that you can see on the trail that are easy to see, all right? One of the easiest of them is the Earth's shadow. And although this picture is taken from the shore, of course, parts of the trail are on the shore of Lake Superior. This is very, very visible from up high. Matter of fact, the higher you are, probably the easier it is to see more of it. And what I'm referring to is the Earth's shadow. You can see this dark blue band right here at the bottom, and it's topped by this glowing pinkish orange belt. It's called the Belt of Venus. And every evening, when it's clear out, you can see the Earth's shadow rising in the east at about the same time the sun sets in the west. And conversely, if you're an early morning riser, you can see the shadow rise in the opposite part of the sky from the sunrise. So it appears in the western sky. And it looks like almost like an ominous weather front approaching, but it's the shadow of our planet cast upon the atmosphere. And we can see it, actually, the atmosphere makes it visible, which is an incredible thing that You're standing on this giant sphere of the Earth, and you can see the curvature of that sphere in the curving edge of that dark kind of steel gray or purple gray shadow. It's topped by the belt of Venus. The belt of Venus is just the atmosphere at high altitude that's still reflecting a little bit of orange glow from the setting sun. So it makes just this beautiful combination of contrasting colors, and it's visible any night from a vista on the hiking trail, the Earth's shadow and the belt of Venus. Because the shadow is directly opposite the sun, the sun is at your back and you're looking east to see the shadow rise. The full moon, as it turns out, is also directly opposite the sun. So one of the prettiest sights is actually to be out on the trail when it's around the time of the full moon. And then you can see the shadow rise with the full moon at the same time, which is just an awesome sight, totally wonderful. You don't have to be on the trail. You can see this from any place. You can get an open view. Next full moon, if you want to plan for this, is April 5th. And if you go down to the shore of Lake Superior, down here in Duluth, if you're in Duluth, you'll probably bump into me. I'll be the guy with a tripod and an extra long lens down there because I love photographing full moon rises. And we'll talk about photography here too in just a little bit. One of the cool things, there's lots of neat things that happen with the moon when it rises. First of all, the color is different. We see the moon through a very dense atmosphere at the bottom of the atmosphere when we look at it, because we're looking out towards the horizon. So we're looking through the bottom where the air is thickest. And that colors the moon, turns it pink, turns it orange, because it sort of filters away the blues and the purples. But it also does something really cool. It turns the moon into like a mushroom almost in shape, or a gumdrop. It distorts the moon, which is a striking sight. And you can see that for just a few minutes around the time of moonrise or moonset. And it's an interesting thing what happens here. Once again, it has to do with the very air that we breathe, the Earth's atmosphere. Here we got the big eyeball on the left. That's you, and you're looking towards the moonrise. The light from the moon is traveling through the vacuum of space. But when it encounters the Earth, the atmosphere of the Earth bends the light upward, higher. It acts like a lens or a prism. And the bottom of the moon, being closer to the bottom of the atmosphere, gets bent up more than the top. So it's as if the atmosphere is literally squishing the bottom half of the moon up into the top. And that's what gives you that curious gumdrop type shape. It's really just kind of an illusion caused by our atmosphere. And we talk a lot about the full moon, and there's always a lot of excitement about watching a full moon rise. I mean, and I am, as I mentioned before, a really big fan of watching full moon rises. But sometimes that morning crescent is really gorgeous. And when you're out on the trail, it's not hard to be up early in the morning for various reasons. Maybe you want to get an early start on a long hike. And so you can also watch that crescent moonrise, and it's just spectacular. You see the bright lit crescent there. Here's the sunlit part of the crescent visible. And then you'll see sometimes the full outline of the moon. And what you're viewing there is light reflected from the Earth, because the sunlight is striking our planet. And we got all these clouds and water that reflects out into space, all the way out to the moon. And then the moon reflects that Earth light back. But it's Earth light, it's not sunlight. So it looks dim and kind of mysterious. So this crescent and Earthlit moon is just a spectacular sight from the trail in the early morning hours. We'll stay up, I guess, as long as we're up to see that crescent moon. We'll stay up for the sunrise. And this is a view taken by Nancy East of sunrise from Lookout Mountain on the trail. I mean, it really is the place. If you get yourself into an open area away from the trees, where you can see sunrises and sunsets. And there's also interesting phenomena that are connected with sunrise and sunset as well, just as there is with moonrise and moonset. And I'll just touch on one of them. Oh, for instance, the sun also, you probably have noticed, comes up squished just like the moon, and for exactly the same reason. But there's another fascinating thing that happens at sunrises and sunsets that you can watch for. And I've looked for this in Duluth. It's not extremely it's a little difficult to see. You just have to make a habit of looking, and eventually you will see the green flash, which is as the sun comes up, the very first little nub of the sun to reach the horizon shines a brilliant, very vivid hue of green. I mean, it is amazing to see, and it's called the green flash. Here's a short video so you can see it happening at sunset. It's the first bit of sun to rise and the last bit of sun to disappear at sunset. There it comes. And gone. And what the atmosphere does, remember I mentioned earlier, but it acts like a prism or lens, bends the light. It also spreads the light of the sun out into like a very compressed round rainbow. And some of those colors are filtered away. We can't see them. But the blue-green, which is at the top of the rainbow of the sun, that's the first color to emerge from the horizon as the sun rises. So we see this quick green flash. It typically lasts a second or two. It's quite gorgeous. So if you're out on the trail, it's something to look for. Again, if you're in a better position, say you're on a vista and you're looking west instead, it would be that final bit of sunlight at sunset to watch for. We talk about sunset, sunrise, moonrise, moonset. It's important if you're on the trail to know when these events are going to happen. You don't want to be caught, starting to get the fire ready or whatever, gathering wood, and it's like, oh, I should be up here on the rise at sunset. I wanted to check for the green flash. So what's helpful is to have an app so you know what time the sun is rising and setting, and the same for the moon, moonrise and moonset. And one of the ones that I've tried and I can recommend is called the Moon Calendar Moon Phases. That's for iPhone. I use an iPhone, so I can't speak so much to the Android options and how they work, but there are Android equivalents to these apps for iPhone. They overlap in a lot of ways. The one for Android is just called My Moon Phase. And when you have either one of these apps on your phone, as you see in the example on the right, I did a screen grab. You can see from there what time the moon rises and sets, what time the sun rises and sets, so you can plan when to be at a certain place to catch some of these beautiful, very evanescent, short-lived phenomena. Other things we see in the sky, and I bet a bunch of you noticed in the past month, you probably saw Jupiter and Venus in the western sky, right? Coming together slowly. And then on the 1st of March and the 2nd of March, they were as close as they could get. And what a spectacular view that was. I've seen a lot of these close approaches of planets in my life. They're called conjunctions. And I don't know, this one really got to me. I just kind of stared at it like it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in a long time. So we have sunrises and sunsets. We have these beautiful events called conjunctions, where you have either two planets, sometimes three, or the moon and a planet passing one another in the nighttime sky, and together they just look so pretty and make for great photographs as well. As a matter of fact, tonight, if it were clear, and maybe some of you are further west of Duluth, you're in western Minnesota, you might have clear skies this evening. We have a conjunction of the moon. This is on March 22nd, and Jupiter. So if it were clear this evening, right around 8 o'clock, you would go out and look low in the western sky, and you'd spot those two beauties together. It's really cool that the moon takes the same path in the sky pretty much as the planets do. And so the moon goes around the Earth once in just under a month, and it visits each one of those planets along the way. So the moon is a super useful tool to direct you to identify the planets. And I've got more tools for you too in just a minute. The other thing that's happening in the sky right now that you can view from practically anywhere, you don't have to be under super dark skies, but the darker the better, of course, is what I call a winter exit parade. We are transitioning the winter season into spring, despite the fact that there's more than 3 feet of snow I'm looking at out my window right now, and you are probably too. And across the southwestern sky at dusk, there's this parade of bright winter constellations. They're kind of on their way out. It's like going to the big parade in Thanksgiving Day, or around Thanksgiving in Duluth, the Christmas City parade, and watching the floats and the bands go by. We have Sirius, we have Orion here, and then Aldebaran in the constellation of Taurus, the Pleiades, And then below the Pleiades to the right is the brilliant planet Venus that really dominates the western sky right now. You might be saying, Bob, this is great. I can go out and look at this now, but how do I keep track of these things in the sky? Because the constellations and the planets and the moon are always moving. So what you need are just some basic tools. And here's the most basic tool. It's called Evening Sky Map. It's available, a new version is available once a month at skymaps.com. And with this map, you get a flattened view of the sky. This circle you see on the right is the entire dome of the sky, but flattened down into 2 dimensions. Along the edge of the map, you'll see the directions: south, southeast, east, north, and so on. Also, and this is really helpful, with the map on the left is a sky calendar. And on the calendar will be all kinds of events visible with the naked eye, things that you could see while you're on the trail. So you don't need a telescope, and you rarely need binoculars to see any of these things happening. So you might want to just make a copy of this or get it on your phone, fold it up and stick it in your pocket and keep it with you when you're on the trail. And then you can consult that map to see if there's anything happening tonight. Speaking of links, this is skymaps.com. I'm going to be mentioning several other links in the presentation. Don't worry about taking pictures of the slides or writing these things down, because I compiled a full list of all the links I'll talk about and the apps and sent that to Annie, and she's going to send that to all of you in the next couple of days. Using that map, about the only thing you really need to know for sure is what direction is north. All right, you just need to know your compass directions. And you probably already have a compass that you're bringing with you anyway during your hike. But if you don't have a compass, your phone has its own built-in compass app. So here's my compass, and then on the right is the app inside the phone. Once you know where north and south are, then you can turn the map appropriately to face the right direction and see that set of constellations, either in the northern sky, and you turn the map east to view them in the eastern sky, and so on. Even cooler than the map, and I really recommend that you download one of these when you can and play with it and enjoy it. It's like having a planetarium in your hand. If you've ever been to the Marshall Allworth Planetarium on the UMD campus, and it's basically a stargazing app. You can get them for iPhone or Android. I use something called Star Chart. That one is free. You can Google Star Chart app. And you can also get SkySafari 6. That is free for Android. It's really an excellent, beautiful program. And that costs $1.99 for iPhone. One of the things that all of these is a night mode. So when you do get the app, go into the settings, and I'm going to show you here, maybe you can see it. When you go into the settings on the right, you'll see the red sky. That's what you want. You put it in night mode so that you can see the sky in red light. That way you protect your night vision. When you're out on the trail, you've got that totally spectacular sky above you with thousands of stars. You want to protect your vision so that you don't have to keep dark adapting over and over again. So always use night mode. Here's a couple of screen grabs from those apps. On the left is one from Star Chart. You can include things like constellation names. Obviously, like any app, it's fully customizable. Here you can include the mythological figure of Orion. He's in the middle of the view here. There's his belt. Or you can get rid of the mythological figure. The interesting thing about the app is it shows a live sky and exactly where the planets and moon are at that moment. And it's only a matter of just holding it up to the sky like this, waiting a couple of seconds. It knows where you're at, and it will show you the sky from right where you're at. Here's SkySafari 6 on the right, and that one is for iPhone and Android. A little different layout, but does the same thing. Another thing that you can do with your phone is night sky photography. Used to be that it was difficult to get decent photographs of the night sky with a phone, but not anymore, which is a joy. I had a really old phone that I used for so many years when I worked at the newspaper, and it really didn't take very good pictures. And I finally bought a new phone. I have an iPhone 13 now, And I just was amazed that I could hand hold that phone and take pictures of the northern lights, as we'll see here in just a moment. This is an example of someone using a Samsung Galaxy and just hand holding it and photograph that conjunction that you saw earlier. This was back on March 1st. We have Venus on the right and Jupiter on the left. I mean, these are wonderful things that you can do just with your phone now. And this is a picture using my phone. And I just handheld the camera, pointed at the sky, and you can see Orion's belt here. You see these 3 stars in a row? Right there is Orion's belt. And here's the kind of boxy figure of the constellation. Here are the bright star Sirius. There's stabilization in the phone, and it's built so that you can just hold it. If you can hold it steady for a couple of seconds, you can do night sky photography and star photos, constellation pictures. This is my very first attempt at the Northern Lights. We had a pretty nice display back on February 15th. And this is a handheld exposure for 3 seconds with excellent color in it. And the most amazing, I mean, it's amazing enough that you can do handheld exposures. But once you take your phone and you get an adapter for it and you put it on a tripod, like I've got here, your phone, once it knows it's rock solid stable, will allow you to take time exposures of up to 30 seconds. And that begins to open lots more possibilities. Here's what one of these things looks like here. This is that clamp that you see in the photograph. And you just screw in the bottom, and then you open the jaws like so and slip in your phone. And you're ready to go. This is a 30-second exposure compared to that 3-second one. And this was on a tripod. And if you recall the earlier picture, look at how many more stars. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just littered with stars. And the moon was out when this picture was taken. So from a darker sky, moonless sky, and the hiking trail should get excellent stuff. This is not my photo, but it was a 30-second time exposure from a dark sky like we would see up the trail, and shows the Milky Way. So you can begin to do your own Milky Way photography right there from the trail, which is great. I mean, it opens up kind of a creative way to enjoy some of your nighttime while you're on the trail. I'm all for sitting around the fire. I love doing that too. But when you have such dark skies at your fingertips, it's really great to get out there and use the app or the map to identify some constellations. On the app, you can tap on any star or object and it will tell you what it is. So you can learn the night sky this way too, while you're out enjoying the trail and the good friendship that comes from that. So we live in an area, and the Superior Hiking Trail is located where the Northern Lights happen routinely. Okay, they never happen often enough, do they? And it's often cloudy. Clouds can be a problem, but when it's clear and when the forecast is right and we get the Northern Lights, it is clearly the place to be. This is an ultraviolet photograph taken by a spacecraft, a NASA spacecraft called the Solar Dynamics Observatory, and it shows the sun in ultraviolet light, and that blast you're seeing on the right is a solar flare. And a solar flare is a place where there's a tremendous amount of magnetic energy compressed and twisting and tangled up on the sun's surface. And when it's tangled, sometimes things reconnect and great bursts of energy are released called flares, solar flares. And that flare will sometimes propel material outward from the sun in something we call a CME, which stands for coronal mass ejection. So it's blasting literally some of the sun's atmosphere out into space. It's headed towards the Earth, oftentimes at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. Our magnetic defenses, same thing that runs our compasses, here shown in blue, generally keeps that stuff at bay. It blows by, but sometimes the material from the sun will connect into our magnetic field. Again, the very thing that runs our compasses. When it does, the material will stream down into our upper atmosphere at, I still can't believe this, 1/10 of the speed of light. And those electrons and protons from the sun strike the atoms in the atmosphere. We're talking oxygen, we're talking nitrogen, the two main gases in the Earth's atmosphere. It causes them to glow. And we see the Northern Lights. And the Northern Lights is concentrated in this beautiful little beanie cap, this little, almost like a donut, and it's called the auroral oval. And we are in a great location, the Superior Hiking Trail, northern Minnesota, because sometimes when solar activity is intense, the donut expands to the south and it crosses over and moves into our sky. And then we see the northern lights. By the way, there's another oval just like it in the southern hemisphere over Antarctica. So here we have an evening when not much is happening. Here's the oval, it's always there. But in order to see the northern lights, you have to be up here on Hudson Bay and Greenland and Iceland, way far north in Norway. But during a storm, which we call a geomagnetic storm because it shakes the Earth's magnetic field, that oval expands. And here you can see Duluth and northern Minnesota and the hiking trail. It is now underneath the oval, and then we get to see a display of northern lights. I have to tell you guys some really great news. I get a regular Aurora forecast, and just check the latest forecast. And tomorrow night, Thursday night, we have a pretty good chance for a decent auroral storm. Now we're talking probably around 11 o'clock, between 10 o'clock in the evening and maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. So, and the forecast is for clear skies. So tomorrow night, keep your eyes on the northern sky, and we might see the northern lights. Now, to help you find the northern lights, there's a lot of different websites where you can check the raw data coming in from satellites, but there are also, of course, Aurora apps, and I've got 3 of them here. I give you 4 links when you'll get that email. There's a fairly new one that's out now called Amazing Aurora. I included that. But we have My Aurora Forecast. That's the middle one. That one gives you alerts where your phone will kind of buzz. You pick it up and it'll give you a message. It'll say there's a good chance for Aurora in your area right now. So it'll actually tell you this is a good time. There's also these other apps. I use all 3 on my phone. I know it sounds a little crazy, but I like the overlap because if one misses something, the other will get it. And one might show the extent of the oval, the other one may not, and may give alerts only. Here's the oval in the Aurora Forecast app. So at a glance, if you see brilliant red inside that oval and it's hanging over northern Minnesota, chances are you're going to see the northern lights. You can use 1, 2, all 3, or even 4, if you like, to help alert you while you're on the trail of potential northern lights. So where do we look at these things? I know you guys have probably a lot of your own very favorite sites, you know, where you like to get up there and take in the sky at night. I have not walked the entire trail, but these are a few of my favorite spots I'll show you that I think are like ideal for either viewing just the stars, constellations, moon rises, sunrises, sunsets, or for meteor showers and northern lights. Carlton Peak, okay, that is a huge open area there where you can view to the north, you can view around the entire compass. So to me, it is superb for northern lights and to watch a meteor shower. Section 13, excellent vistas to the west and to the north, another great place for northern lights. Of course, both of these areas, Carlton Peak, Section 13, are located where you're well away from Duluth and Thunder Bay, and so you've got guaranteed dark skies when there's no moon. Really, you know, a low place that nonetheless has a fairly good vista is Sanju Lake, which has nice views to the west and north, overlooking Oberg Lake. I mean, that is about ideal for northern lights. Look, you're facing to the north. You can sit back and just watch them unfurl and those rays shoot up and maybe take some pictures. There's Pincushion Mountain, 360-degree vista again. A+ rating for northern lights and meteor showers. I think you get the picture though. It's generally getting up so that you're just got that view of the sky. The more to take in the glory of it all. And speaking of vista for watching meteor showers, just need a pad, right? Just get that pad rolled out. Just kick back, maybe a little something for your head. Maybe pull something over you to stay warm. and just let it rain meteors. We have the perfect year for the Perseid meteor shower. It peaks on the night of August 12th and 13th. So mark your calendars now to be sure to be out on the trail. So there'll probably be 1,000 people now on the Superior Hiking Trail. But I mean, that would be like the prime place to watch that meteor shower. And this year's is excellent because sometimes a moon will ruin a meteor shower. A bright moon will flood the sky and we won't see the fainter meteors. But this time we won't have a moon. So it should be a great shower. One final thing I wanted to add, and then we'll open it up for questions, is to bring binoculars. I would imagine a lot of you have binoculars and bring them anyway, but just in case, I wanted to point out what you can do. I do believe this instrument is underused. If you have a pair of binoculars, you can hold them reasonably steady. You will see moon craters. You'll see star clusters like the Pleiades, so much more detail and richness compared to the naked eye view. They provide beautiful views of lunar eclipses. They enhance the colors of the eclipse. You can use them on the Earth-lit part of that crescent moon to see details in that dark area. They will show the moons of Jupiter. And one of my favorite things about a pair of binoculars, especially if they're around a 50 millimeter size, that would be the aperture of the lenses at the ends, about 2 inches for those lenses, you will see that the Milky Way, especially the summer Milky Way, you've seen it maybe from the trail. It's billowy, comes down at an angle. You point binoculars at that billowy Milky Way, and you'll begin to resolve it into stars, and you'll see little fuzzy patches of star clusters and nebulas and star clouds. So you see some extra detail in the Milky Way. And something you could look at this month just to check it out, just to see if I'm telling the truth or not, is grab your binoculars on March 25th, which is what, this coming Saturday, if it's clear, point them at the crescent moon, and to the upper right of the crescent moon, you'll see the Pleiades. And if you've never looked at the Pleiades in a pair of binoculars, I think you'll be amazed. It's really quite a sight. And with that, we'll head back, and I'm open to questions or comments. Annie, did everything come through okay?
That was wonderful, Bob. Thank you so much.
There weren't too many delays, I'm hoping. So
We could understand you very well. A
good,
little bit
good.
of lag, but not too bad. Yeah.
Great.
And what a wealth of information. I'm sure we all have a bunch of questions, and we've got a few in the Q&A from Matthew. He says, first, hi, AstroBob. Thank you so much for doing this talk.
Matthew.
And he asks, what is your favorite time of year to view the night sky on the SHT?
Well, I think overall, thanks, Matthew, for asking. Overall, I think for the night sky on the trail or off the trail, I think early fall is really the most wonderful time. There's so much happening on the trail in terms of color change in the daytime, and then weather is generally fair. It's not too cold yet. The bugs are gone. You get temperatures in the 50s and 60s, kind of ideal for stargazing, and it's often clear. So those are good months. You've got some clear skies to pick from in the month of October, last half of September. And during that time, the Milky Way is right overhead. I mean, it just cuts the sky in half. So you've got that every clear night when there's no moon. So I would have to say early fall.
Mental note, already an amazing time of year on the trail for many reasons.
Yes.
So add another reason.
I know. And you get the harvest moon too. If you go in late September or early October, and if it happens to be full moon, the harvest moon is a special type of moon because it rises just 15 minutes apart, 15 or 20 minutes apart each night. So you get like 4 full moons in a row. It just comes up almost at the same time every night. So you get that beautiful golden light at moonrise, and you don't have to stay up late. And you could add that to the list too.
I'm definitely going to download the moon phase apps that you mentioned, because as a former through hiker, I feel like I missed out, because one thing that I never did a night hike because I'm actually quite afraid of the woods at night. So I like to be in my tent by the time it's dark. And
Understandable.
But I feel like I'm missing out. Like I would love to experience the forest at night. I realized with your recommendation of the moon apps that now I could plan if I ever want to do a night, my first night hike, I could purposely pick a full moon night, so it's not quite as scary.
Heck yes. Heck yes. The other thing is there's two other things about the enjoyment of stars in the woods at night. And we've seen this. I bet a lot of people have seen this who are listening now, where they're turned away from the campfire and you can see the stars sticking to the trees and coming through the little apertures between the leaves and the needles. And to me, that's one of those sights that's always just been seared into me since I was a teenager, seeing that for the first time, like the stars were ornaments on the trees. And that's something that you can only get from within the forest. One thing, Annie, about getting out of the forest and deliberately planning a camping spot near a vista is vistas generally feel safer because you're, oddly enough, more exposed. You're out of the woods, and you can see around you much more easily. It's surprising how good a vision we have at night if we turn off our headlamps. Use your headlamp to get there, say, then turn it off and allow your eyes to night adapt. And then you'll begin to see much more than you ever imagined. Also, more stars.
Wonderful. Our next question is from Brett. Brett says, we are excited and love this idea. Go SHT and AstroBob. Big fans. Thank you, Brett.
Thanks so much.
I would love to know the answer to this too. Brett wants to know, how did you get your nickname, Mr. King?
I had to come up with this was years ago in 2008. I had to come up with something for the web when I worked for the newspaper, when the web was becoming quite the thing. And so I suggested writing about astronomy, and then you have to come up with a name for what you're writing. And so I thought, well, why not AstroBob? And that's how it started. And I guess it's stuck. Because I have people calling me that more than anything these days.
Yeah, it's a fantastic
It makes me laugh.
From Matthew, again, he's asking, if you were going to view the Northern Lights north of Duluth, where would you choose to drive?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I've got a couple of suggestions for that because I know how hard it is to find a place. You need to get north of the city. Obviously, we have dark skies north of Duluth, and I recommend two places. The first is the Riley Road Dog Park. It's the Rice, or is it the city of Duluth? But it's the dog park on Riley Road, which is just off Jean Duluth Road by the soccer fields. It would be nice if the soccer fields were available there, but they're not. The gate is locked most of the time. But the dog park has a parking lot, has a great view to the north. There are lights at the park, but they're very low and they don't disturb. So that's one place. If you really want dark skies and a truly scenic place to see and photograph the lights, say with your phone, then go up to Boulder Lake. And if you're familiar with Boulder Lake, you pass both ski trails there, cross-country ski trails, and you go to the Boulder Lake Public Landing. So it's about a half an hour from Duluth, but you can park there. There's a lot. That's the thing, is getting off the road, because being on roads is uncomfortable for a lot of us. So you can park there at that public landing, and then the view is to the north. You have water. You're on the shore of the lake. And so if we have a good Northern Lights display, it's reflected in the water. So you get two displays. So that's a good place. I recommend both those places. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Jennifer is wondering if you have any apps that you would recommend for nighttime pictures, or if you just use your phone camera as it is.
That is a great question, Jennifer. And I just got the phone so recently. Right now I am looking into apps, but unfortunately I can't recommend any because I haven't downloaded them yet. But there are apps that will allow you to manually dial in anything easily. Right now, I just use what the phone has, and I can manually dial up to 30 seconds. But eventually I will get an app, and maybe I'll talk about that another time. But I'm sorry I can't give you advice on it at the moment.
And Jennifer, I can just add, I haven't done this with a photography app yet for a phone. But I've really wanted to. I have used one for video a lot called Pro Movie, which does allow you to control aperture, white balance, ISO, all of that. And it does make a big difference because I don't know, but I always feel like my iPhone, it's gotten better as the cameras have gotten better, but especially the early versions, it always, the color was never right. It never felt like how the forest actually looked. So having that ability to adjust it on. So I'm sure there's good ones out there. It's
There
amazing.
is, I just recalled, I took a peek too, because I'd forgotten the name, but the one I was going to look at, Jennifer, if this is helpful for you, is something called Nightcap. Look that up, Nightcap app. And I know that allows manual adjustments and probably the things that you're looking for.
Kathleen would like to know, is the Carlton Peak you referenced the one in Duluth?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I'm referring to the one that's north, the one that's off by, what's it closest to up there? But it's up north of Silver Bay area.
I think the closest kind of well-known landmark is Temperance River State Park.
That's it. Yeah, that's how you get to Carlton Peak, is you park
So
at the Temperance lot. Right, you've been there, and then you walk up, you hike up, and then you can get up to the peak. It really is a pretty magnificent view. I'm not sure about Carlton Peak. You know, there's Ely Peak in West Duluth. And from Ely Peak, I think you would get a decent view of the northern lights, but a lot of the southern sky and eastern sky would be damaged, ruined from light pollution from Duluth and so on. But if you're out in the far western end of town, and you wanted a quick getaway, you could go to Ely Peak, or you could just go about 30, 40 miles south of Duluth. One place I found south of Duluth to go to that has a good sky to the north, surprisingly, is Barnum. I wanted to see a meteor shower once. It was cloudy in Duluth. I drove to Barnum. I took a right, went through town. I just drove down a rural road and I pulled off. That's how I get to a lot of my places. I just find what I can find sometimes. And I was just delighted with how dark the sky was to the north and actually all the way around. So the Barnum area does work as well. It's far enough away from Duluth.
I would not have guessed that. So thanks for the Barnum tip.
Nor would I have guessed it either, but I saw the northern lights that night from Barnum.
Chaz, hi Chaz. His question is, some celestial telescopes have cell phone photography adapters or mounts. Do these work well? And are there any tips for using this option? Many thanks.
Yeah, there are. One of the really greatest things about cell phones is that you could take spectacular photographs of the moon through them through telescopes, any telescope. And I do it the primitive way. I get the moon through the eyepiece of the telescope, and then I just hold my phone over it and make sure I tap it to focus and adjust the light. And then I just take picture after picture after picture. That really works. That very simple way. You can also buy an adapter for your cell phone that will hold it over the eyepiece. That's very nice. And then you don't have to worry about the moon moving out of the field of view of your phone. So yes, I would recommend that. If you have a scope, get an adapter. It's spectacular for pictures of the moon. You can get decent photographs of like Jupiter too, maybe some the bright asteroids. So there are some subjects that way. On another tack, there are telescopes now that you attach your cell phone to, and then using software, you move the telescope, and when the X lands in the middle of your cell phone, what you're looking for will be visible through the eyepiece. So you use your phone to navigate to a nebula or a galaxy or whatever it is. And these telescopes are called Celestron Star Sense telescopes. And that's a different way. That's where you use your phone to navigate to an object, so you don't have to actually look it up on a map or peer through a little finder scope. Or just use the phone and hold it over the eyepiece and take a picture of the moon. The moon is huge. I mean, it's like a professional photograph. It's amazing. Whenever I do public observing sessions, I love to offer people that time to get their own pictures of the moon.
Final question tonight comes from MJ. Bob, great presentation. I benefited from one of your classes at Boulder Lake a few years ago. Love the new technology. Awesome. The night you had us out stargazing, you had a light baton to show us the stars. Where might one acquire one of these, as it would be amazing to use to help kids ID the stars and other goodies?
Yeah, and that's a great description of it, a light baton. Wow, I've never heard it called that. I love it. Uh, and thanks for taking the class. What it is, it's a green laser that I used. And those are available on, my gosh, you can get them anywhere, Amazon for sure. Get one of the brighter ones that has more milliwatts to it. It's sometimes hard to get through all of the different ones. There are so many, but get a bright green laser. I can't recommend one specific brand because they basically all come from China, and there's a million names, but they're all the same laser, and you can find them on Amazon. But the color is green, and make sure it's something like more than 10 milliwatts, and that's abbreviated 10 MW. So you want to get above that number, and that will be bright enough where you can use it with kids to point out things in the sky. It's the best way to locate the stars and identify the constellations, as you know.
Thanks, Bob. And that's also a fantastic segue into asking if you have any classes coming up in the community that we could further our learning with you.
I've got, well, actually, yes, I do happen to have some classes coming up. I've got, you mentioned that I've been teaching community ed for many years, and I'm continuing that with a spring session. And that starts, I think they'll advertise for it at the beginning of next week. But that starts on April 18th, and it's 4 evening sessions, an hour and a half apiece on Tuesday nights. We do a talk, we use the planetarium projector, and then if it's clear, we go out and look at what's up through the telescope. Take the telescope either outside the planetarium or observe from Skyline Parkway over Lakeside. And like I said, that starts on the 18th of April, community ed.
Community ed with City of Duluth?
Yes, City of Duluth, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have fun there. It's a good time because you've got all these different tools, you know, the planetarium projector, and we can do slides and again, observing, real-time observing.
I'd also love to recommend that you all, if you are a Facebook user, that you go and follow AstroBob, his Astronomy for Everyone page on Facebook, because there's a lot of fun, equally fun information there, posts about things, events that are going to be happening soon. It's really a great resource for learning online. We just have a couple minutes remaining. We've answered all the questions so far. Did anybody else have any other questions they wanted to ask? Well, I'll share a comment from Chris then, Bob, because I think the whole group shares this sentiment, which is, this was amazing. Thank you so much. So much great information. And your enthusiasm is contagious and inspiring.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. It really is a pleasure. And always an honor for me to be able to share what I love with you guys. So thank you. Thank you for those comments as well.
All right. And so to close tonight, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We'd like to give a special thanks to those who donated at registration. If you have not contributed that yet and would like to do so, you can make a donation or become a member at superiorhiking.org. Support from trail users like you powers our work of keeping the SHT beautiful for hikers and stargazers, and allows us to provide helpful information like this. If you'd like to join us for more online events, you can follow our social media or sign up for our monthly Trail Mix e-newsletter. On April 19th at 7 p.m., we'll be joined by Ariel Bonkoski for our Foraging for Mushrooms on the SHT to learn about the trail's famous fungi. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everybody. Great time.